Hello, everybody, and welcome to Visual Disturbance. I'm your host, Brian Reese. And what did the Denisovan people know about the eclipses? I said the eclipses. Eclipse is coming up in April the 8th, 2024. It's a big hot topic right now, huge hot topic, and a lot of people have been in fear stance on it, and all kinds of weird anomalies that go along with the news and all this different things that has been corresponding across the airways as far as the internet. And I have my opinion on it. There's a lot of different things that I could go on and talk about. But today, this Denisovan people, they knew a thing or two about eclipses. So let's get into it. So this region, these peoples, right, the Denisovan people, this term Altai-Salian region had the ability to calculate long-term eclipse cycles. Can you believe that? What do you think they know now? Also had the knowledge to these cycles to develop their very complex numerological base and calendar systems that would be part of religious, cosmological, and part of an antediluvian world. Reel that one, folks, and wonder what that's all about. Could you imagine what they have today in today's society? But we're going to get into that. All these systems had a inception in the southern of Siberia. It might have been inherited from the lost times of these people, this Denisovan people. There's a lot of evidence that also to do with these long-term time cycles and some type of inaudible noise, sound, etc., talking about, let's just say, frequencies and harmonics here, right? That in ancient times, though, it was to do with the sun, the moon, the stars. But it gravitates toward the star constellation that looks like a bird. And if you know and follow the Visual Disturbance channel, I've been talking a lot about birds here lately. I've been talking about bird men and all kinds of different things that go along with mounds. But today, we're going to be talking about a certain constellation system that looks like a bird. And this bird constellation is Cygnus. If you remember it, I mentioned this program. I mentioned this exact thing on Let's Put a X on it. I know that people got a little irritated that I said, let's put an X on it. That's my Kentucky slang, but I intentionally did that for that, but I know that I should have said proper terminology here. Let's put an X on it. But I did it just to fit my country swagger, my Kentucky swagger. I did that intentionally, but for future reference, I will not do that again. But let's put an X on it. I did mention the Cygnus star constellation. So this Cygnus is literally the celestial swan. I wonder what the building... There's a building out there, folks. There's a building out there, ladies and gentlemen. If you not have seen this or heard of it, there is a weird thing that we're going to talk about here in a little bit to do with the swan and the significance with the celestial swan. Well, let's get into the Cygnus and what it has to do with this eclipse coming up in April. So, when you really look down to it and get down to the grind on this particular topic, there's something nefarious going on, okay? Obviously, the total solar eclipse, and let me get that better there for you. So, for you. The total solar eclipse in 2017 and 2024, we have that one coming in April the 8th. As you can see there, I put Cygnus constellation on top of the X marks the spot. And I really did want to go back and kind of touch base. So we're going to be touching base back and forth on this particular topic and, you know, some of the locations and whatnot that has all this to do with Salem and all these different correlations with different land and different things with the event in 2017 and then this event in April the 8th. So if you look on the right-hand corner of your screen here, Maconda, a.k.a. the Star of Egypt, in southern Illinois, a.k.a. Little Egypt, area code 618. And at the middle of there where it has the Cygnus constellation that I put on there. Obviously, it's not going to fit perfectly straight there, but it says greatest duration point of 2017 eclipse. But the totality, there's going to be a lot of people that is going to the Star of Egypt in the southern Illinois, aka Little Egypt. And I thought that was very interesting to point out that this area, Makonda, and then if you talk about, we're here in a little bit, we're going to talk about what the Denisovan people spoke about and correlations with Egypt and, ancient Egypt and all these different cultures. But we're going to keep an eye on this. The Cygnus and what it lays upon, X marks the spot. What is going to happen? Only God knows. But the propaganda and all the fear-mongering and all the nonsense that goes along with this April the 8th, literally coming up in just literally just less than a week and a half. Pretty bizarre world. But let's get into it. Let's continue on here. So, speaking of, we was talking about a particular building, a particular spot that has, here we are talking about the Cygnus and the swan, right? Let's go here. The UN building. The UN building here. This UN building, when you look at it, it is called the Mural of Peace. The Mural of Peace. Well, there's a lot of stuff here that we could depict on here, and we could probably spend all night and day trying to depict it, but just to bring up for the program here, what is it called again? The Mural of Peace. As we can see in the middle of the screen here, middle of the picture, there's a swan. There's all kinds of other things to do with war and different symbolism here, horses, but I want to navigate here to the swan. Since we're talking about Cygnus, the star constellation, here is the white swan. There's a swan here. It could almost look like something else we're going to refer to here in a little bit. We're going to reference a book here after a while, but this significance of the white swan, but if you look at the bottom underneath it, it's standing over basically a carcass of another swan. But if you look, the light, it's dark down here, dark and, doom and gloom, horrific. There's all kinds of nefarious things going on here, and then there's all kinds of weird stuff going on here on this cathedral set up with the different levels here. But in the middle, the white swan, and then we have a darkness. So we have a black swan, a white swan, so keep that in mind. So here's the kicker. This so-called bird that we're talking about here with the constellation of Cygnus is, let's just say, here's the kicker. So it's called a cosmic bird. It's also called like a guardian. And guess what? An entrance to a sky world, a Stargate. No joke. And apparently, hear me out on this one. The evidence of this is thought that the Stargate, a human soul has to pass through to be incarnated and or enter into the afterlife. First, I want to just throw this out here on Visual Disturbance and what Brian Reese stands for. I will not be participating in with this next saying that I'm getting ready to say here. First, I do not believe in incarnation or reincarnation, but I want to mention that because it's pretty baffling that that's what this signifies in this constellation and do with the swan, and we're going to get more deep into it here in a little bit. So, but the evidence I will agree with Stargates is pretty valid. You have the biblical narrative and you have the Book of Enoch that have enough to have that conversation for a future broadcast or future program. So, I have this book. That I want to mention. It's really interesting. It's a book called we have Andrew Collins and Gregory Little. So this book is pretty interesting. The Denisovan origins of hybrid humans in Gobekli Tepe and the genesis of the giants of the ancient America. Pretty interesting book. We're going to talk about some things here, of course, pull all this stuff together in here on Visual Disturbance with the black swan, the white symbolism with the white swan, and this constellation Cygnus. Well, here's one thing I want to throw in here. There's ancient Egypt has evidence also of acoustics and numerological systems that have geometric and connections that the light toward Giza. So there is a connection to Little Egypt and the constellations Cygnus of ancient Egypt. So I found some interesting stuff in this book. So, Andrew Collins has done a darn good job as looking into the giants and stuff, and as far as these hybridization humans and whatnot, and these different things that go along with what I would say antediluvian and sometimes after the flood knowledge here when they're looking at different giants and different megalithic structures. So let's get into it. So let's get the book here. So there's a certain thing here. It says, in the quote, give a big shout out to these people. So I don't want to, I just want to read from the book of Andrew Collins here. This is called the Finnish Soul Bird. Okay. According to the Finno-Ugric mythology of northwestern Eurasia, which is derived almost certainly from a much older Uralic tradition. That is, they originated among the Uralic-speaking peoples of Ural Mountains in central western Russia. Migrating birds, swans in particular, are seen to carry the soul into incarnation. Indeed, in Baltic folklore, it is a swan that brings the babies into the world, not the stork. So remember what I said earlier, folks. Make sure that we hone in on the UN swan. So isn't that interesting? To do with this Baltic folklore that brings babies into the world, not the stork, as it is more usual than many other countries of Europe. Swans also carry the soul into the afterlife at the moment of death, according to the Finnish folk tradition. In one mythical account, for instance, the soul of an individual is passed from one swan to another until it reaches a boat waiting by the banks of the worldly river. This leads from the physical world to a northern place, land of the dead, called the Tulion, said to be the domain of a beautiful swan. Remember the UN mural of peace. Isn't that interesting? Can't make this stuff up. So let's go on. Let's go on further here. Let's get more into this. So, in Finno-Ugric sky lore, the North Star, as the center of the heavens, was said to be the location of a column that supports the starry vault. As this revolts, it causes a great whirl at the North Pole. And it is through this whirl that human souls gain access to the land of the dead. Almost certainly, the long pole-like necks of the swans seen among the rock art of Lake Onega also signify the axis of the earth. Being connected to the celestial pole, it was upon this turning axis of the heavens that the souls of the shamans and those that decrease would climb to reach the afterlife, presumably through a hole in the sky like that found in the shamanic traditions of northern Eurasia. In some areas of Finland, a carved wooden Siili-Intu, or soul bird, is left next to a bed to stop the soul from escaping its physical environment during sleep. Wow. During, or so called, the environment of the physical of the environment of your sleep, the soul is left next to a bed to stop the soul from escaping the physical environment. Doing so prevents the soul from becoming lost while navigating the passive dreams. A search from the internet shows that you can still buy a wooden Siili-Intu today, and although many are highly abstract in design, some are still restrained the long neck of a swan. So as you can see on here, these Siili-Intu, they're called soul birds, right? We have a soul bird connection here. what is this and what kind of nefarious stuff is going on here with this soul bird? And wow, that is from this book of Andrew Collins. And the soul bird and the shamans, the shamanic traditions, the putting it beside your bedside with this particular bird. We have this, we have the connections with the dark imagery. We have the stork, but slash swan carrying babies, and in reincarnation, we have this so-called thing here with the mural of peace. That's all crazy and demonic in my opinion. But what do you guys think? Isn't that just bizarre? And it's baffling to the mind that this so-called soul bird, Seolintu, say that 20 times in a row, Seolintu, and check, put this beside your bed, and then it captivates and basically controls your soul while you're asleep. Isn't that just bizarre in itself? So I mentioned earlier, too, there's a imagery in the book. There's a very cool imagery in the book, and it's the rock art from the Lake Onega. So the Lake Onega has very interesting petroglyphs. I'll put it up here, petroglyphs, and all kinds of connections here that I want to point out. So this rock art from Lake Onega in Karelia, northern western Russia. So I looked at this and I was thinking, man, this is really cool. We have this, here we go with the black swan, the soul bird connection and this Russia connection. And what is it? I mean, what's going on here? And is there anywhere that I could find that there's any correlation or connections that I could come up with when there's anything to do with petroglyphs in America, especially with this eclipse, and where the connections are and where the totality and whatnot is going over these certain sites? Well, lo and behold, like I say all the time, you just can't make this up. So there's a place called in Jackson County, Illinois, not too far from Little Egypt. When we mentioned earlier, not too far from that site, not too far from Maconda, the Maconda site, we have this, the Fountain Buff petroglyphs. Well, as you can see here, there's birds, there's bird imagery. Obviously, there's always deers and stuff like that, but there's a lot of bird imagery. This one was very significant too here. I was wondering, it's kind of, to me, it was something to basically hone in on, because we have this incarnation, we're talking about the something to do with the stork slash swan. So you have to really think about what we're looking at. Is there a correlation? What did these peoples know? What did the Denisovan people know, and what was they articulating here, especially here in Illinois? So right where the totality, right where one of the hot spots is going to be, where there's going to be a lot of tourism going on with this eclipse, we have this on a rock, okay, at the Buff Mountain. So one would wonder, what is the correlation? What's the connections? And what do you think? So the first thing I thought of was, so I looked and seen what kind of symbolism and artwork where this would, as far as the correlation with this Jackson County and all these different things in this southern or Illinois and whatnot. So I thought it was very interesting. So I went and started digging and looking around, and I found this map. As you can see here, let me zoom in on it right here quick for everybody. As you can see here, we have Kentucky, we have Illinois, but we have this area right here is going to be the hot zone, right? So I just want to zone in here. We have Cairo and we have Karnak. So these two, and then we have, obviously, this is a Shawnee National Forest, but Karnak, if you have an opportunity to go on FOJC Underground Church, me and Brother David are doing a series on cities lost in time, and if you get a chance to watch that, check it out if you get an opportunity. This one reminds me of Karnak, the Temple of the Long Skulls that we did. It was a very good program. I suggest that you all go back and watch it. It's worth the second or third time watching it. But let's get back into the Karnak and the Cairo. So in Cairo, in Karnak, when we did the Cities Lost in Time with the Karnak Temple of the Long Skulls, I noticed that there is symbolism and different things with our megalithic and archaeology sites there that would look like a Stargate system or some type of ancient antediluvian system. And I thought about it whenever I was looking into the Denisovan people, and they knew how to calculate maps and do the geometry and numerological systems, and be able to basically magnify and then hone in on the eclipse. And I thought that was really strange. So wonder if this knowledge, and based off the Denisovan people, I wonder if the Egyptians might have got a hold of that in some shape or form. And we'll only find out from, we'll only speculate. But I want to hone in. Did the ancient, we have these ancient Denisovan people, did they have knowledge to use constellations? Or, excuse me, did they have a ways to map the constellations? Is there evidence of ancient Egypt and Cairo having examples of sounds and acoustics and underlying geometry? And did they have some type of pre-knowledge to map out the long-term cycles of these eclipses? I guess only time will tell, but the info is baffling in the mind, in my opinion. So here's just a thought. So to make things even weirder and more, I guess the word is strange in itself, NASA, you gotta love NASA, they have come out and decided to, let's just read this, literally just yesterday. They have this bizarre announcement. I guess they'll be doing something weird on April the 8th. Let's read this article here. NASA has announced it will fire 3 scientific-sounding rockets into the moon's shadow on April, you guessed it, April the 8th, on a Monday. So, to me, why would they do that? So, and they're explaining here, they're saying during a partial solar eclipse across the North America, and what will be a total solar eclipse for 115 miles wide path through parts of Mexico, 15 U.S. states, and Canada, and a partial solar eclipse for the entire Americas. The event will see a sudden drop in sunlight. And it goes on. The space agency's Project Atmosphere perturbation around the eclipse path will investigate how that drop in sunlight and temperature affects Earth's upper atmosphere. APEP is named after the serpent deity from the ancient Egyptian mythology, nemesis of sun deity Ra, according to NASA. Now, what in the world is going on here? And I guess they're chasing the devil's comet. I guess they're going to be shooting down the devil's comet. So the first thing that I thought of really quick is if there's any kind of communication, especially with this these origins of these certain peoples here that are telling this story and telling all this documentation here as far as what their culture was, and these Denisovan people, I wonder if NASA knows something that the public don't know. So they're going to have to shoot off rockets to make something happen or something to that effect. But I cannot believe that they're going to do this for some type of all this other stuff and fear-mongering and all these other different things. And they, there's people calling them schools, etc., and all those different things in the totality of this area. And there's some cities are calling state of emergency and all this stuff. But then we have NASA doing this insanity. So I wonder what's really going on here. What's your all's thoughts? To me, that a lot of things are going to be going on April the 8th. But the first thing I thought of, as far as, God's in control always. But I wanted to share something. I don't have a slide for it, but I wanted to show this. I wanted to speak of it. When we was talking about the swan and all this stuff and all this nonsense with reincarnation, incarnation, and all this other stuff, that is just I can't even get on board with it. But it's interesting that the stuff's been documented and it's in an occult stance on it. It's dark, right? The darkness of it. And so here, trying to shed some light here. So if you go to the biblical narrative and you look at Jeremiah 1:5, I thought about, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee and ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. And I thought about that. I thought about, we're here for a reason, and whatever cometh, whatever kind of nefarious things come down the pike, there's no need to be in fear, and we'll get through it, and God will see us through. And then Jesus is King, and we need to lean on the Lord. But I just thought this stuff was interesting, and we have this Denisovan people that knew something. They knew how to navigate all the constellation systems, and literally better than what we can for astronomers' dream now. Apparently they knew a lot more as far as mapping out the constellations, which Cygnus, and we have this swan, and here in the news since the other day with the Baltimore incident, there's a lot of speculation called the Black Swan event. You know, we're not going to get into that, but it's just interesting that all these things correlate with Cygnus. And you have the eclipse on April the 8th, and you have all this information that is just so compelling and something to really hone in on and think, what is going on here? But anyways, that concludes this program. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Check all the links in the description. Help support the Visual Disturbance channel. I have a coffee link at the bottom inside the description here. Check it out. Got a couple things on there. We have some things from Draw Living Waters, etc. All kinds of different things you can check out on that on the coffee page. But anyways, hope y'all are blessed. I hope everybody has a great day. Visual Disturbance, Brian Reese, I'm out of here. Everybody have a wonderful day, and just be in prayer. And April 8th is coming pretty quick. So y'all have a good day. See you on the next one.